Thank you very much indeed, Nadine, and thank you for a really excellent session this afternoon and the way you managed so many people via this complex link. I think it's worth saying that yesterday I received a copy of an email from a student nurse at the University of Plymouth, where I used to be Deputy Vice-Chancellor. And the argument in her email was, the main problem that we've got at the moment is that the older generation in nursing can't use IT, and that is stopping us develop the future. And I think while we've been talking, it's a bit more sophisticated than that, but while we've been talking, it's really struck me that what's exciting about the Good Governance Institute is that we welcome expertise, however young it is, wherever it comes from. And Andrew still thinks there's a place for some of us that are a little bit more long in the tooth. And I think it is by sharing across age groups, across different backgrounds, that we will in time get much better governance and a return perhaps to the spirit of Nolan in a much stronger way that I think has ebbed away in a lot of the Western world. And earlier when we were talking about would a written constitution help, I think somebody put it in the chat room, but I'm forced to say Trump has a written constitution. So that there are real challenges, I think, for all of us. But Andrew in particular has really led the Good Governance Institute over a very choppy period and ensured that despite COVID-19, we're here today to celebrate, which I think is fantastic, particularly as Zoom will get even more overloaded with the next round of changes. So well done for steering us through to this point, Andrew. My understanding is that the Good Governance Institute chooses to give an award to an individual who over a long lifespan, or indeed a short lifespan, has really contributed to improving the governance of our society. And I was referred last night to Dame Janet Hilary Smith's short CV in order to prepare for this afternoon. Well, there is no short CV. I can tell you that now. She has had an illustrious career right the way through, fighting for the rights of the most disadvantaged in many, many cases, both as a barrister, as a High Court judge, as female president of the Inns of Court. She was the judge appointed to lead the Shipman Inquiry, which made recommendations that mean we do not have individual practitioners anymore that cannot be checked against others, and we're all held responsible for ensuring that what happened with Shipman cannot happen again. She then went on to do the investigation for the BBC in relation to Jimmy Savile. And what is stark in that report, which I'm delighted to tell you I had read before, but refreshed myself yesterday, was the way it is written in plain English. So every individual can see, and I'm sure feels very uncomfortable about the things they didn't know by turning a blind eye or being concerned about their own career and therefore not wanting to rock the boat. Things have really changed since the Jimmy Savile investigation in the BBC. And we know that the BBC moves forward in a much more fair way between the races and also perhaps between men and women. And I say perhaps because we still haven't quite got the pay right. But I do not believe that Jimmy Savile could happen again because people felt ashamed of the fact that they'd entered some kind of groupthink. And I really commend that report to any of you that haven't read it. She's now the convener of a cross-party political movement called More United, and it is my belief that we will only respond to the crisis our nation and the whole world has around COVID-19 by being more united. So I'm very keen to hear a little bit more about that. In 2013, Janet was identified as one of the most influential and powerful women in Britain by Women's Hour. I would say that continues some 7 years later. So that shows you about tenacity and longevity at making things better. She has also conducted a public inquiry into the abuse of children with autism. And of course, there are further investigations being conducted in relation to how NHS services have treated some of those children. So this work goes on, and it is an absolute honor to declare the Good Governance Award nominee and therefore winner for 2020 is Dame Janet Hilary Smith.
Is it me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Good. Only my Wi-Fi keeps telling me that the bandwidth is poor, and I'm afraid of losing you and you losing me. First of all, thank you very much indeed for the very kind things that you've said about me. I feel very honoured by this award. And I confess I've never really thought of myself as being involved in good governance, but I'm very flattered that you think that I have made a contribution. I'm quite old now, and I'm able to take a long view. When I was young, the main problems of governance of which I was aware were back scratching in appointments, jobs for the boys, hardly ever for the girls. That was rife. There was another problem, was that there was no concept of independence in the sense of avoiding conflicts of interest. And I do feel, looking on the bright side, that there's been a lot of progress in those respects. And I'd like to congratulate the Institute, because I feel that they must have made a real contribution to that progress. Of course, those problems have been overtaken by different ones, highlighted by Rob Whiteman's excellent talk earlier this afternoon, and by the discussions that have just been going on. I told you a moment ago that I didn't see myself as being involved really in good governance, although I suppose, thinking about it, maybe I have. I have always felt that my work, particularly in the inquiries, was more related to trying to make things work better. For example, in the Shipman Inquiry, I was trying to improve systems of death certification and coroners' functions and security of controlled drugs and the disciplinary functions of the General Medical Council. And until it was mentioned a little while ago, I'd forgotten about clinical governance. But that was really a desire to make things work better as well. In my view, you can't have good governance without underlying competence. And I want to talk just for a minute or two about that, because I do feel that that is the major problem that our society is facing. Examples of it abound. Today, test and trace has been talked about. It's in the news every day. It's just one of many examples. Why on earth can't we make it work? I think it's because we have a problem of underlying incompetence. And I think that there are three related reasons for this. The first is that I think we have chronic underfunding of education, particularly tertiary education, and I think it leads to superficial vocational training, and I think that is a major problem. The second is I think we have far too much churn of jobs. people seem to feel that if they haven't changed their job about every 2 years, it's going to look bad on their CVs. I think we've adopted the idea that if you have a personal skill, such as communications or IT or administration, that skill or the combination that you have can be just instantly transferred into another job. And I think this leads to a lack of depth of understanding of the jobs that people are doing. I found many examples of this during the Shipman Inquiry. And I felt then, and still feel now, it's been something of a bee in my bonnet, that this churn leads to incompetence in the jobs that people are doing. The third thing, I think, is too much churn of systems. Changes to systems, usually made by government, not always, but usually, very often, it seems to me, under the guise of reform, but in fact, change for the sake of it. There's been some mention of change in the health service this afternoon. In the Shipman Inquiry, I begged the government, and it's there in my report, to leave primary care alone. It had been reformed to about a year, 18 months before I was looking into primary care during Shipman. And I discovered that it wasn't working terribly well. People were already worried about the next threatened change. The result was they weren't really concentrating on the job that they were doing at the moment. They were more worried about the job that they were going to get after the next reconstruction. Now, that really is no good. I think the civil service are particularly bad about this. I think they're bad about churning jobs as well. And I think that it leads to incompetence. And without competence, I don't think we can have good government.